All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome once again to the Warrior Women Thriving Live podcast. This is episode number 2, and we are here with my friend and fellow coach, Janese, all the way from Hawaii.
Hi,
Welcome,
everyone.
welcome, welcome, Janese, and welcome to all. I'm just going to just give some rules for the room. If you have a question later on, just raise your virtual hand and also keep your mics off because we are recording the session. Replays will be available on either YouTube or our Anchor podcast system. So we'll keep you guys up to date to that. We are just going to get started in the interest of time. Other people will probably be popping in, but I just want to say tonight we're going to talk about ancestral lineage, and that's all about the energy that's stored in your system from generation to generation, from childhood to adulthood. And Janese is really going to speak to that. So before we get started, Janese, let's give the audience a little bit of who you are. So tell us a little bit, who are you?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me here. I'm so excited to be here to share this because this is just a passion of mine that I've set in my life that I've been doing for not only myself, help clearing my own ancestral baggage that came down from my own family. So I'm born in Hawaii on the Big Island. For those of you who don't know where that is, it's one of the active volcano. So I live here. I've lived here my whole life, and I have a 25-year-old son as well. So I'm a mom. I have a cat mom as well. Have my family around me, bringing some ancestral stuff, talking about ancestral stuff, and how that can affect you and affect your lives if you're holding on to that, on any level, spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical, and how that shows up for you in your life. So, yeah, I'm excited to share
All
that.
right. So I'm so excited because this is my sister. She is a thriving survivor. So I just want to put that out there. And this podcast is to empower other survivors and especially women, right? So that's what we're looking to empower women. I know that we do have men in the space, and we thank you for the men that's in the space that's supporting us and standing in solidarity with us as we come into October, which is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. We really want to speak to this and start empowering women to stand up for themselves and just understand who they are. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. So Janese, we talked about where you live. So your profession, what is it you would say you do as a coach?
Well, my profession would be I'm a generational kahuna, which means kahuna in my culture in Hawaii is known as a shaman, a priest, a priestess, someone who has healing, can do healings and spiritual connection. Anyways, that got passed down to me from my mom's lineage, from my mom, from my grandfather, from my great grandmother. So I was born into this family of healers. And then so long in my life, as I was getting older, I had my own child, and then that's where my healing journey started. And then I do energy work, and then I do clairvoyant work. So that's kind of what I do as far as like ancestral stuff. And I had to break free from my own patterns, and not just my own patterns, but the patterns that was coming down from my lineage that I did, like, that wasn't even mine to begin with. So kind of like being able to break free from those, really heavy rooted patterns, coming from way, way back when.
Yeah, I definitely want to dig deeper into that, but we just want to get to know who you are first. So,
Yeah.
tell us a little bit, like, why are you here today? What do you hope to accomplish in terms of your message to the audience today?
Well, my message is like, I want you to be empowered by that, even these stories that may not be yours, that you have the power to change them, to make your own story. Whatever story that you want to live and how you want to live, and break free from that so that you can stand in your light, in your power as your authentic self, being able to fully express who you are, and then let that shine out so that you can be that for everyone else, for your children, for your family members, and just breaking cycles.
I love that, especially the last part about breaking cycles, right? Those generational curses. So let's get into your past. What does that look like, before trauma? Like how was it when you were growing up? And then when did you notice that, something wasn't quite right?
Well, my trauma starts from with my mom. So I came in with a mother wound. So I have mommy issues. So that's where it started. I always felt like I wasn't good enough for her. I always felt that I had to prove myself. Then I became like a people pleaser. As I got older, I started like people pleasing, making other people around me comfortable. Like I wasn't comfortable with who I was because I wasn't allowed to, because of my pattern with my mom. And my mom was, a very emotional, unbalanced mom. Like she was very controlling. So a lot of that pressure was on me and my sister. So we couldn't able to like be who we are. And so that like kept me hiding, it kept me in fear. It took me a very long time to even speak about what I do, even to share this part of me, which is my birthright that's coming in from my lineage. And it took a lot of work because just to even be here, like I would get on like literally like on podcasts just like this, and I wouldn't talk. Like my first coach, like I had a hard time even explaining what I do, so long like telling someone else I did, because that pressure from my mom was so heavy on me. So that's kind of like where I started it like that. And then when I turned 17, I became a mom at like 17 years old, a young mom. And then there you go. I was all in like fear, worry, like how am I gonna like take care of this child? My mom even told me that I fucked up my life, like literally, like, and hearing that from my mom, and just like it went on and on. So as I was raising my son, I always felt that. I always felt that I wasn't good enough to be a mom because I had this karmic pattern with my mom. So here I am, a mother myself. I've always felt that I wasn't a good enough mom for my child.
Mhm.
So I end up becoming that from her. And then comes to realize, like, as I started doing my own healing journey on myself 13 years ago, and I started this journey because I wanted to be a better mom. I wanted to be a different, I didn't want what she has shown me. I wanted to be someone different, me. So I started my own healing journey. And through my own healing journey, I realized that she was showing me what she was taught from her own mother and how her mom treated her. Once I recognized that, and I was able to give her compassion for what she has gone through, that helped me heal my story, my journey.
Wow,
So
that's very powerful what you said there about not, first of all, you said a lot of powerful things, but let's just go back to the piece where you said you didn't recognize what was going on. So how did you recognize it? How did you get the language? Because I think that's where a lot of women get stuck. They don't recognize or know the language to determine what's happening to them. So for those of you who came in the room a little bit later, Janese is talking about having a mother wound. So her mother was creating the trauma for her. So how did you recognize that, Janese?
yeah, not only she was creating the trauma for me, but also I was taking on her trauma as well and creating that in my life. And that's a whole different topic. We can talk about that. But yes, so how I was able to, well, what happened, what really like got me was my son was about 7. And I got upset and I really went off the handle, and I started just yelling at him. And I just saw my son's face, and that just broke me, because I remembered like me being that little girl when my mom used to do the same exact thing to me. And at that moment, I seen my son. I could see it in his eyes. What did I do to you that you don't love me anymore? And that broke me. That what changed me. So at 7 years old, I stopped. I asked my son. I told my son first, I'm sorry. Can you please forgive me? Ho'oponopono. I love you.
Yeah.
Can you please help me to be a better mom for you? And he said, yes, of course. Children's going to want to help, right? They're all about love. So of course, you're their mother. So they look up to you. So they're going to want you. So my son said, yes. And I told him, so I told him, I made a promise to him. Anytime you heard me say something you didn't like, it made you feel uncomfortable, or hurt you in any way by my words or by my actions, please stop me, please. And he did. And then he's 25 now, and he's been keeping me straight. But don't do that anymore. But yes, because when my mother would go into her thing, what she was going on in her life, living in lack and scarcity, trying to survive, raising me and my sister, like she would snap and sometimes be physically abusive, But because I was able to experience that with my mother, I got to catch myself when I was doing that to my own child. And because I didn't like it as a child, I was able to stop myself. Sometimes it's not that easy.
Yeah, I bet. And I want to go back to where you talked about the generational curses, because you took on energy from your mom and she took on negative energy from her mom, and so on and so forth. So let's talk about that. How does that look, and how do we detect that, right? Those generational curses, and then how to come out of it.
So this is something that happened in my personal life. This was showing up for me a lot. So what happens is, if things starts to show up physically in your physical life, it could be like an illness. It could be like some emotions that you just go to. Like for me, I went to anger and rage. I wasn't dealing with my emotions, right? I immediately went there. That's how I knew. Or it could be like if you're having trouble in relationships with any kind, that's also showed up for me as well. I always felt like this disconnect, like I couldn't trust people. So I never let people in. I never let people get close to me. And I kind of always wondered why I was always closed off, why I wasn't open, why I always wanted to. And then I ended up self-sabotaging a lot of my relationships, even my friendships, relationships, because I didn't allow people to really get to know me, So these are just some of the things. I've had clients who they have lack of sleep. They can't sleep. Some had headaches, So these things will show up physically in your life. And the best way to recognize them is look at your life. Everything in your life you've created up to this point. You've chosen things to get you to where you are now. And if that's not the result that you wanted, then there is some kind of karmic pattern there that needs to be corrected. Okay, if that's giving you unease, pain, frustration, uncomfortableness in some way, well, there's something that needs to be addressed inside of here, so that you can change that on the external reality world.
Yeah, I agree with you there, because it showed up for me like that. These patterns it took 15 years, first of all, for me to come out of this emotional trauma that I was in after the abuse in my relationship when I was married. And then 15 years, there was just this lull of me being in what I call emotional purgatory. And I didn't realize why I was physically getting ill. And it's because I was holding on to all of this baggage. And you're right, self-sabotage in other relationships, because I certainly didn't trust. the walls went up. So when I had my transformation 6 years ago, that's when I started my healing journey. I did exactly that, like started working on relationships. And my program even that I'm going to be offering is built on the core relationships of self, a relationship with God or higher power, relationship with your family and friends, relationship in like business or work or community, and then relationship with intimate partner relationships, right? So for me, those are the core areas that I feel like women wanted to address because of that. Because when I started coaching, I realized the same thing with your clients. They're all like having physical ailments and manifestations of this trauma that they're carrying, right? From whatever it was that happened under relationships, whether it was abuse, assault, toxic relationship, toxic divorce, just relationships in general that just went awry, if you will, right?
Yes.
And for me, once I realized that, that was my first blind spot that I had a breakthrough in, to realize like, wow, I need to say the Hawaiian word for forgiveness again,
Ho'oponopono.
please.
Ho'oponopono.
Yes, Ho'oponopono. And when I learned about that process, like that was what did it for me. That journey to freedom started with the forgiveness and the Ho'oponopono process. And we'll be going through that in the program because it's really powerful, right? And you could talk a little bit more about that, but I just wanted to, really solidify that because I'm not as physically ill anymore. The doctors couldn't figure out what was wrong with me.
Yeah.
So, right. And until I let go, and now I move with grace and ease, and it's so much different and easy now. Like I don't have those pains anymore. And they couldn't
Absolutely.
figure it out.
Because it's all energy. So it starts with energy, and it starts with you. The abuse, the trauma, my mom wound was just mirrors. They're just teachers showing me what's going on inside of here. I needed to learn how to believe in myself, trust in myself. Once I started knowing my own worth, that whole situation with my mom disappeared. My relationship with my mother is even better than ever because she can't take that away from me. I know who I am. I am solid, sovereign being in who I am, and I make my decisions based on that. And so because of that, I have a beautiful relationship with her now. She was able to heal her mother wound as well from her mom. She came to me and said, oh, I was able to forgive her for what she did to me. And I was like, wait, what? I was shocked. That was not the words I thought that was going to come out of her mouth, because my whole life, all she told me was she beat me, like all her, like what she did.
Yeah.
What my grandmother did to her. That's all I heard my whole life, until I started talking to her about, like, I was going to therapy, I was doing my own work. Then she came out, and then she came telling me like her life, her story, and all that. And then, as I said, like these things get passed down, and we don't know what they are. But we will know what they are is when they show up in our own lives.
Yeah.
Like even I had a client with cancer, same thing. She was overgiving. She was giving too much. She didn't have any boundaries. But when she had boundaries and she stopped overgiving her energy, she was able to take that energy back, take her power back, and put it in herself and heal herself. No cancer.
Wow.
So these are just things that starts with energy first. And why I love doing this. And when you shift that energy inside of you, you are the broadcast system that will reflect outside your external third D reality, what you get to taste, feel, experience, all of that. So what you're experiencing right now, and that's not what you want to experience, well, there's something in here that needs to be recognized, brought up to light. Just bring light to it to transform it.
I want to go back because you talked about like with your mom and the things that she did to you. Do you think there was mental illness in there somewhere? Because I know in my family there's a lot of mental illness.
Okay, but there has to be, because they're all related. You know what I mean? You cannot not have one thing and not connect it to the other thing, because your emotions is connected to your mental state. And it's connected to the energy, right?
Yes.
So an energy goes into your thought patterns. The energy goes into your emotions. And then what happens? You become that and you start creating from that energy because now you've absorbed it in your body, in your cells, in your DNA. And now that's how you operate. It's like your body's like your operating system. So you cannot like just do mindset work and not do emotional work and then not do the energy. It's all one. It's whole. We're wholeness. We're a human being. We are whole as a soul, as a powerful creator. So we cannot, once we do that, what we're doing is we're creating suffering for ourselves by disconnecting ourselves from the whole, because we don't want to look at a part of ourselves. And that's shadow work, right? That's normally comes from childhood trauma. So what happens when we start to disassociate and disconnect ourselves from a part of ourselves, that's where we create the suffering. That's where we create the pain. That's where we create, things in our lives and attract things in our life that doesn't, but then again, that's our lesson. We chose that to learn something from that. Like I chose being in this family with her being my mom because she was teaching me something, and vice versa. I was teaching her something as well. My mom will never relive this if she decides to come back and reincarnate as a soul because we worked it out in this lifetime.
Wow. I love what you're saying, Janese, because I think I really want to reinforce for the audience to hear that you have the power to change and manifest good health in your system, in your body, and energy, it never goes away. It's stored. So you can replace the energy, like she's saying, and you can shift it to be something more positive that's going to serve you, as opposed to something that's that negative energy, that's disempowering, that's limiting, right? All of this. And I love the way you explained it, because that energy is attached to your emotions, and your emotion is attached to the behavior, right? The actions that you take. So sometimes we make decisions from this negative, disempowering, limiting thoughts, as opposed to something positive, and that's something going to be for us. You mentioned lack and scarcity. So that's when I started thinking about, this poverty consciousness, and it all comes from that negative energy. And I like to talk about abundance and prosperity. So let's move into transformation, because I think we really nailed it where we were in terms of the past. Let's move in transformation. You talked about, what point was enough. And I think you started to allude to it when you had your son, and that when he was 7 years old. So let's go there. Like, what was the catalyst that, made you change in terms of how you treated your son, and then the resources that you might have used to help you do that?
Well, even though like this started at 7, I just started to become aware of that. It took me until he was like 13, 12 to actually really do real work on myself. Okay. And what it was is that one day I was leaving work. I was working at a hotel, and there was this big health fair. And I went in and just to check it out. There was this lady in there waving her hands in the air. And I was like, she is crazy. I don't know what the hell she's doing. So I found myself in front of this crazy lady. And she goes, "Do you want an aura healing?" I'm like, what is that? Like, I didn't have no clue of what she was talking about. But I wanted it. My soul wanted it. So I said, okay. After she was done, it took like 5 minutes, okay? She goes, "How was that?" And I was like, my face was just like, "What did you do to me, lady?" She explained to me that our energy field around us, and our energy is a sponge. So we absorb everything around us and we walk around it in our energy field. And when you don't clear that, you're holding on to it. So it makes your energy feel heavy, tired, frustrated. So if you're feeling these emotions right there, that means you're holding on to energy in your energy field. And then so once she removed that, oh my God, my energy was lighter. I was happy. I was skipping out of that. Like, oh, my heart was open. Ever since then, I was like, I need more of this. I don't know what you did to me, lady, but I need to do this. Comes to find
Exactly.
out later down the road, it was because I was like, oh, this lady's crazy. It was my family telling me to stop because my family is not open to this at all. Even though they're kahunas, they're not open at all. They have so much fear around this. So because that, immediately I was like, this lady's crazy, stay away. But my soul knew. My spirit knew I needed this woman in my life. Ever since then,
Wow.
it changed. And I started like clairvoyant training to develop my clairvoyant ability to see energy then versus feeling energy, being able to discern between what is my own energy and how does that feel like for me then versus taking on energy from in the external world, from other people. And it stopped taking from other, like absorbing energy from the outside world. So I learned clairvoyance to help me to set healthy energetic boundaries between me and everyone else. And once I started doing that, my whole life started to change. My relationships with my son started changing. My relationships with my partner started changing. My relationships with my own self started changing because I got to get more compassion and love and care that I needed than
Yes.
versus all that stuff that I was carrying on from my family, especially my mom, but my family and
Yeah.
everyone
Yeah.
else. Yeah.
Wow. I'm loving what you're saying. It's all in alignment with the program that I'm developing as well. And I'm so happy that just to let you guys know, sneak peek, Janese is going to be working with us and offering some of this healing work in the program. So you'll get to see more of her. But I love something that you said around boundaries. Let's explore that a little bit more, healthy boundaries and what that looks like, because you're right. Sometimes we absorb other people's negative energy. And like for me, I want to be a force field for that. I don't want anybody's negative energy because I'm really focusing on positive and, the can-do attitude as opposed to I can't, right? I've eliminated that from my vocabulary. So I'm looking at not taking on anybody else's negative energy. So how can we set those boundaries and keep our, energy healthy, as you stated?
So if you were to imagine that here's our body, around our body, there's an energy field. Okay, everyone's is different, but most sizes, I want to say give or take, depend. It like if you were to put your elbows out on the side of you and you put your arms out on the side of you, this is kind of like a healthy aura, a healthy energy space around you. So anything that's outside of that is going to be the world's energy. Anything inside of your arms and your hands like this, it's going to be all your energy. So a lot of times we are not taught to claim our energy and be in our own power. Why? Because we were told, oh, you're too much. Oh, you are just, emotional. Or, you know what, just let them go. You know how they are, especially if you're around other family members, right? You're like, oh, I don't like this auntie. I don't know. But then all of a sudden your parents or someone says, you know what, you know how they are, just deal with them. So now you just have to suck it up because you know what I mean? So these are ways of how we give away our boundaries, how we
Wow.
have leakage in our energy, and how we're giving away our energy like that.
Wow. That's
Mm-hmm.
powerful. I love that. Like, I love this,
Yeah,
so audience, remember, like, this is your personal space.
this
Anything
is yours.
beyond,
You claim it.
yeah,
Anything
claim it.
along that and it's not yours, give it back. Just put it in a like I have tool like you can there's certain ways you can do this, we can play around with it. So as I said, like this is the energy field and this is like you want to be comfortable in here. A lot of times if your energy aura field is really close to your body, a lot of times it's you're shy or maybe like you know you're hiding something. So you see people who are depressed, they go like this. Well, their aura, their energy field is smaller. You see like actors or you see like people on stage, their energy is really big because they expanded their energy. And
Wow.
sometimes when you see people, you can feel their energy, right? When
Yes.
you walk into a room or if you meet someone like, oh my God, I know you're like my best friend, like how we met. Like we knew we were gonna work together because we could
Yes.
feel the energy of that. Okay.
True.
But what happens is that we end up leaving this, like leaving that, but we end up taking on the energy once after the conversation is done. So if you're repeating that conversation in your head once we're done here, or you're feeling some kind of emotion and it's still happening, and you're cooking dinner, but you're still there, you're not in the present moment, you're in that energy still, meaning that you're still holding it in your field. So
wow.
like, yeah, so if you had days like when you wake up, you feel amazing, you feel great, the world is like at your oyster, you're ready to take on anything that comes at you, and then what, your boss calls or your mom calls, something happened, and then what happens, your energy field goes down. Well, what just happened is that you just took on that energy.
Yes.
Because it shifted your energy state.
Yes, that is true.
And then now whatever that conversation went, the boss started yelling at you and you started feeling angry because how dare him, I work really hard, or whatever it is going on, whatever dialect, whatever story is going on in here, you're holding on to that. And what's happening is you're losing your energy. Your energy is dropping because of that. So there's an energy leakage.
Wow. I really love how you explain that, because so many people let other people steal their joy. And that's exactly what it is. When we talk about that in the Bible or in different Christian-based songs, right? It said, don't let the devil steal your joy. And that's exactly what that sounds like to me when we absorb other people's negative energy, right? Because if you can change your state based on what somebody else is doing that's negative, then you are not in control of your own power. No. And I love the way you explain it. And I really hope that you all are hearing this, because you have the power and control, right? You can choose what you allow to happen in your energy state and what you absorb in and what you keep out mostly. So you don't have to let things upset you or people upset you. And I've learned to stop doing that. Like, I don't have an emotional attachment to what people do or don't do. And I think that's really important, because I've been stress-free because of it, right? Because I don't let other people stress me. If I can control it, right? And I love that quote in the past where it says, know the things that you can control, have control over, and know the things that you should worry about, right? I don't know the quote right off right now because I should have had it already ready, but the point is knowing what you can or cannot control and then being okay with it. And that's the piece that I think is missing sometimes. We get upset about what somebody else did or didn't do. And I look at it like this: if nobody's dying, it's not that serious, right? Things can be fixed, or I can do it another time, or whatever it is. If no one's dying, then it's not that serious to me. So I just took a different approach now and really protect my energy field, like as you were saying, because I don't let people upset me like that anymore. I used to. Things used to get to me, but I don't anymore. And I have to practice that every day, right? So that's why I'm able to, flow with ease and grace now, because it's not that serious to me anymore. So I love how you explained that. Thank you for that.
You're welcome. Yeah, because sometimes so when things happen to us, especially like a trauma or something, and it gets lit up and you get triggered or charged up from it, a lot of times we go back to our old self and how we would deal with that problem in hand. So the problem keeps happening over and over and over again. You cannot change a problem from the same energy that was created in. You ever had a fight with a partner and you guys are arguing? You guys got to walk away and then come back at a different emotional state so that you guys can talk with one another to be in a different state so that you can have solutions to this and move forward. But when these things are coming up and you are handling these things, like especially for women, I've done this before, that, I would suck it up. And I will dig my heels deep and say, you know what, like try to be a big girl, and I will just do it. But then what was happening is I was resisting. There was still energy resisting inside of me that was still like, there was an internal fight that was inside of me, and it was a struggle. Yeah. But then once I realized and I got to let go of the internal fight and struggle, I was able to just hold my boundaries with ease, with just so much more flow. And you can do this by having a tool. So outside of this energy bubble, you can just imagine like another bubble outside of there. And in that bubble, you put the world out there. You put the news, you put whatever you hear on social media, you put your girlfriend, you put your family, you put your kids, you put the dog, everything out inside of that other bubble outside of you. And that's where that goes.
I love it.
And then here is your own energy bubble. So it keeps that separate.
I love that. Wow. So let's move into present day. So what gives you the courage and strength to speak out today?
For me, it's like based on like just what I've gone through and just seeing like the changes in my life and the progression of just my life, I do it. But really what I do it for is for my son. Like I just like being able to pass down these karmic patterns or ways of being to my child so that he can have this amazing and beautiful life however he chooses how he want it to be. A lot of times family, friends, people, they like to project what they want from you. They think that it's better if you do it this way or however, and then a lot of times they do. That's one thing with my son, like his dad. So because I was able to break my patterns with my mom, my son was able to break his patterns with his dad. So this is why I really love doing this work, is that I'm able to help now my son go through this. And so my son's pattern was his his grandfather owns a restaurant and he's very successful. His father started working for his father at a young age. So when my son became of age to work, guess what? His dad came to him like, no, you should come and work for me. And I was like, no, he's going to make his own, because you didn't have a decision when you were younger. You do not do that to our child. So I go, no, he has a different path. He's going to want to do a different path than what you want. His grandfather was trying to tell him, you need to go to college. You need to do this. You need to do that, especially college. And I was like, no, he's not going to go do college. I'm like, no, he's not. He's not a college kid. He's not going to do college. His dad wanted him to work at his company. And I was like, no, he's not going to work for you just like how you worked for your dad. That's not going to happen. He's going to do what he's going to do. My son's an electrician. And happy with
that's
it.
a different pathway.
I got to do completely something different, and he loves it. He's really, really, really loves it. And he's 25, and he's like one of the foremen of the company. He was able to excel because he didn't have all of these heavy limiting, pressures coming from his grandfather or his father.
Wow, beautiful.
That's beautiful. That's what gets me like doing this and just like helping him go through all of that, and also helping other women who wants just a better way of life, that knows that it's possible and they just want a better way.
Wow. I love that, because so many of the women here may be moms or maybe not, but some of that work is with self, or it could be with a spouse or a significant other. It could be with parents. It could be with siblings. It could be with children, right? But it's all about the core, right? And again, my program is around relationships and building and rebuilding relationships, or restoring them, I should say. So I love what you're saying here, because you gave your son options. And my son is 26. He'll be 27 in November coming up. And I still can't believe that. But with him, same thing. I told him, as long as you're doing something, I'm not going to dictate what you do. You just can't do nothing. Because he used to like to sit in his room and look up the ceiling. And I was like, no. You have to choose something. So I said, either you go to school, or you're going to work, or you're going to figure something out. So he decided, and now he's doing really good though. He's working at his company. He's been moving up in the company. He works for a box manufacturer. And I was like, hey, that's his path. That's what he wants to do. But on the side, he's still making games, because that was his first love. He wanted to make, those video games. He loved video games. So
yeah.
he's got partners where they're developing, and they've been making different video games. So he does that. He's in that whole world, trading the cards and all this nonsense. I don't know what it is, but he's doing it and he's loving it. And I'm supportive of that because he took charge of his life. And, you know, I wanted him to go, you know, all the way up through college, but I said, you know, I'm not going to force that on him because he's not going to do good because he doesn't want to do it. He had his own way. So I love that you're doing that with your son.
Yeah.
It's
when we put our own energy into it, and then the other person, the receiving end, they feel that on some level energetically, that pressure.
Yeah.
You know? And of course, you know, after a while, you see a lot of kids, they go to college and then they don't end up being the degree because that's what their parents wanted. Or they're trying, you know, they're doing things, they're not in alignment in who they are because they don't know who they are. They don't know what their energy, who their energy is or what their energy is. You know, they don't have that boundary, you know.
Yeah. That's so true. And I work in higher education space for the last 24 years. And we see it all the time with the parents coming in, dictating what the students should major in and do. And they don't want to do that. And I, you know, used to have an opportunity to do a parent's presentation. And we would say to them, you have to allow your student to follow their own passions, because otherwise they're going to come here and they're going to fail out. And especially if they go to the four-year school, I work for a 2-year institution, but 4-year institutions, you know, it's like maybe 10 times the price is what we charge. So if you send them there with all of that pressure, they're not going to do good. They're going to flunk out. And some are committing suicide. It's so much pressure from the parent.
Self-sabotage happens.
Yeah. So again, that energy going from, you know, the generations, it's also a curse. It can be, and I know the parents mean well, but sometimes the parents cause the trauma for their kids as well, like your mom did, right? And her mom did, and so and so. So, wow, amazing. So in the interest of time,
why is it so important that for us to know ourselves, know our energy, so that we can give others and ourselves space to like really be our own true authentic self.
Exactly. I love that. In the interest of time, I want to get to the place where people can ask questions. So let me just ask you another, just as you know, my program is about warrior women thriving, and the idea of creating this big vision that God gave me, 1 million strong warrior women survivors who will be thriving, who will be empowered and inspired to take back power, control, and freedom over their life, right? And so what do you think why do you think we need to create a program such as that?
Because we weren't taught that in our lives. We weren't taught that from our families. We weren't taught that in our society. We weren't taught that in our culture. And we live in a different world in a different way, and we need to do things different. We need to let go of those ways so that we can connect to one another, share with one another, be ourselves with one another. And that's the only way we can grow as human beings together, soul consciousness, and we can elevate to where we need to be. And we can't do this alone. We need one another. This is why we need these types of programs to help other people to come up. This is why I feel that this is my mission to not only clear the work for myself, but also be that leader so that I can bring the people up with me and then build a beautiful community around me, you know?
Wow. Beautifully said. Beautifully said. And that's exactly what, you know, I realize as well. You know, we are warrior queens rising, and the idea of building community, building sisterhood so that we can amplify, edify, and expand one another. We can hold each other up for our visions, our goals, our dreams, right? I help women walk into their divine purpose and help be the midwife for them to birth what's in their spirit, what God called them to do. So that's, you know, that's a labor of love. This will work, right? It's heart-centered. And no one forced me to do this. I'm called to do this work, and I'm enjoying every step of it because women are getting the breakthroughs, and I can't wait to launch the program so that, you know, you guys can take that one step further. So let's see. let's start opening up the chats. If you have a question for Coach Janese, raise your virtual hands, and let me see if I can see the virtual hands. Let me go on the gallery view so I can see you. All right. Hey, I see my sisters over there. Hello. Raise your virtual hand if you'd like to ask Janese a question. And I hope you guys have some questions for her because she came with some power today. You guys, oh, there we go. All right. Hi, Josh. You can go ahead and unmute yourself. All right.
Hi, Coach Janese.
Hello.
That was amazing. Thank you for your story. I think it's so powerful and so necessary because I don't know that we understand the impact our parents, especially mothers and daughters, have on our identity. And I just recently had a conversation with my mom, and we are very much alike, and we sometimes butt heads, especially with, I don't know, I feel like past traumas. And I think y'all both talked about power and control. And I think when we are over, or when we are under someone who is an authority figure, we lose our sense of control. We lose our sense of understanding what we can control. And as I was talking to her, I just had a really cathartic conversation with her. And it was nothing but God. And he even called me in the room, and I started very tense and, ready for her reaction, how we normally have our conversation. But I just surrendered, and I kept saying, I'm not blaming you. I'm not blaming you. This is how I received it. And it was such a healing, like she told me stuff, I think as you said, your mom did, about, her past traumas and stuff like that. She told me stuff that she had never, it literally was a piece to pieces of a puzzle that I was able to put together that made so much sense to me, that gave me so much peace. And I apologize if I missed it. But did you at a point talk to your mom about, here's how I'm feeling, or here's what our experience did? And, how did she respond to that? Because I know you said she talked about, based on your experience and your healing, she saw that. But did you talk to her about maybe what happened, how her experiences made you feel? Excuse me.
Yes, and thank you for asking me that, because this is, oh my God. So about six years ago, I was like, I can tell how long ago. I went abroad and I started traveling. And as through my travels, shit would happen. Actually, things will happen. And this is way before I knew about what was happening with my mom. I knew that she was abused as a child growing up. She told us all the time. But then I came home, didn't think anything about it. As I said, like, I've always had trouble connecting with people. So then I started therapy after I got home, right after that. And what happened in my experience when I went abroad, I got stalked by a gentleman that I had to run onto a ferry. He was literally stalking me. So I went on, I came home, I started doing some therapy work. And then through my therapy work, my therapist, we were talking about my mom. Ooh, that was a touchy subject at that time. And so one day I went to my mom's house to visit, and I opened up and I told her, Mom, I know sometimes we pass on patterns to our children and we don't know what they are, but we do. And she looked at me and she was like, I'm so sorry for what I have done. I regret that, what I've done between you and your sister. But this is the part that I did not see coming. She told me her deepest, darkest secret was she was abused. And she opened up and was able to heal that part of her. She's never told a soul. We started crying and hugging. And I realized that incident in Europe was because I was holding on to her pain. I didn't know that was happening. I had no clue. I just went to her to tell her, hey, this is what happened to me as a child. You beat us up, blah, 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 blah. But I didn't see that part coming. So we were able to come full circle. And that was able to share some light, that was able to relieve her some of her shame and burdens that she was carrying and I was feeling. And I didn't know that it was happening to me. And then that incident happened in Europe. So it was just a beautiful, beautiful moment from then on after that with her, between her and I. So thank you.
Wow.
Thank you for asking.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
Wow, I love what you're, and guys, raise your virtual hand if you want to ask Janese a question. Joshua, thank you so much for asking that. That's a powerful question because I think, I look at the relationship with my mom and I've been investigating as well to see like what was the traumas that they experienced, because something was definitely went wrong and I don't know what. Like we've been trying to discover, my cousin and I, we just started investigating to see. But people started talking about sexual abuse and molestation and things like that in the family. And it's like, we had the mental health issues, we had drug addiction, alcoholics, or like all this violence and trauma from the past. And I was like, wow, this trauma that they're carrying. And then I noticed, like in my family, when they get mad, like they hold on to this hate, right? Forever. And then I'm like, why can't you guys get along and communicate? And I know like my mom, she's so stubborn. She's like, I'm not doing it. And that's that. I'm not speaking to that person. And they did this and they did that, or they didn't do this and they didn't do that. Can you guys hear me? I lost y'all. Oh, there we go. And I was just like, mommy, like it's too much, right? And then, sometimes we can get along and sometimes she take it out on me. And I'm like, okay, I'm not having it because I don't want to say anything that's going to be, offensive, right? And I can't take back. But at the same token, because I'm in that space where I'm not allowing other people's negative energy and trauma, that I'm going to absorb that. I'm not doing that. And I don't care who it is. And I tell my mom that, like, I'm not taking on that negative energy. So she doesn't like when I don't co-sign with her when she's talking about people and doing, doing negative things. I was like, I'm not doing that. Right. And she's like, I knew you was going to say that. So why are you telling me? Because I don't agree with it. I don't have to co-sign that. It's not right. And a lot of times it's against another family member. So I'm not getting in the middle of that. And it's like, when she do it to me, I stop it. So it's hard because you talked about mother wounds. I've kind of had that growing up because, again, in my family, they drink, they smoking, they doing this and I don't do that stuff. So that's not like my thing. Right. And so when they getting drunk, and I got a family member on here now, she could come on and attest to it. They start the fighting and carrying on. And I'm like, this is too much. Right. And so that's why I asked about the mental health in the beginning, because I know that like our family definitely had suffered from mental health because and that's a generational curse.
It is. Well, when you're holding on to shame, energetically, shame, guilt, fear, any of that, and you're holding on to it, what will happen to that energy? It will get manifested somewhere, somehow. Why I picked that up, and that experience happened in Europe. Ever since then, no guy ever stopped me ever since then. I totally changed by releasing all of that energy. By my mom was able to bring it up and clear that shame from that she's been holding on for 60 something years,
Wow.
And
That's
a lot
powerful.
of times, like, that's what happened to a lot of people. Like, things will happen to them in the past, but they didn't have the community how it is right now. They don't have the people who like how we are now, empathetic, sympathy, and to even express that. What they were told is like, especially for women, like, you did that, you brought that on to yourself. You're the blame. So now you're carrying this energy, not only that you're shamed, okay, now you're blamed, now you're being blamed for, and then now you're covered with shame and you're holding all this shame inside of you. That energy is going to get manifested. It's going to be created because it's not healed. It needs to be brought to light. It needs to be healed.
Thank you, God.
And be addressed. And what happens is that shame, what happens once that shame goes in, just like my mom, she had her ego came in. That's the mental illness. The ego came because it needs to protect you. It doesn't want to feel that trauma anymore. They took it away. They disassociated themselves because the pain was too much for them.
Yeah.
So then ego comes in. So now you got to work with that and get over that ego and get over. And so I was able to do that because I was able to talk to my mom without blaming her. for what
Yes.
happened to me. So because I didn't go and blame her, she was able to open up and get past the shame. If I went in rolling hot with blaming her, there was no way that she would have gone, because she's already has the blame going on from that experience that's causing her shame. So I went in without hot and heavy blaming her. And she was able to give herself permission and come out and bring it to light and heal that.
And you made a good point. You can restore a lot of relationships with that piece that you just mentioned, communicating without blame. That was the way I restored the relationship with my ex-husband, because when that was a tough one, and people in this space know about that. We couldn't communicate at all. Every conversation was argument. And certainly I didn't want to, even, through that 15 years, my son was like nearly almost grown and we're still arguing. And I definitely didn't want to keep fighting him, because I was like, at some point, somebody's going to get killed, like literally, right? And yeah, I meant that, killed, because I was done. Like, no, you're not putting your hands on me anymore, right? And it's like, 6 years ago, when I first had that awakening, that reveal that God gave me, I started that journey to healing. And one of the blind spots was exactly what you said. Have a conversation without the blame, right? Without the hate, because it was.
The blame is our job to take care of. The blame is our kuleana, our responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
But our responsibility isn't about how they're going to react. Our responsibility is how we are acting and how we are acting. So if we have the blame, that's our job.
Well, they're going to put up defenses. The moment you go in like that, they're going to put up defenses. And so you've lost any potential of conversation.
Right, exactly.
Right. And in the Ho'oponopono, I hope I said it right, that forgiveness piece was huge for me, because it was a matter, of God releasing me from whatever I was holding and storing, right? But it was able to help us restore that relationship, meaning we can communicate, like we're not back together like that, but we can communicate, right? Without all the negative attachments. So that's
the baggage.
huge.
Without all the baggage coming in.
Never thought it would happen. I never thought. Nina, did you have a question? I want to get to other people.
I love that.
No,
I love that.
Charlene, go ahead. You guys can talk. Bring your reactions. You guys could talk. This is open communications now. So,
well, I just want to jump in and say, I think it's interesting as we're talking about generations, because I think, we're around the same age, I think. And I think the generation of our mothers and our parents and things like that, they held on to, from their parents' generations, who had to hold on to, especially, different groups, but had to hold on to their trauma and keep secrets. And, it was so interesting how, like I said, like when I had that conversation with her, there was such a reveal that I'm like, why would you keep it? It literally, I did not blame her for that. But I'm like, Mom, if I had known this, like, it would have helped me so much. And I think we tend to practice those same ways of processing things. And at this point, like, it's a cycle. We have to break that cycle. And I think we're now coming into that place where you said, we weren't taught this. We weren't taught that it was okay to share this. They had to remain secret. And I think at this point now we have to understand that we can't keep these secrets, because they manifest physically, and they can kill us. They have killed our family members. They have, manifested in disease and suicide and mental health, like mental illness. And I think it's so important now that, but even Alaysha, with you talking about your ex-husband, we have to also understand, and it requires a lot of strength in us. We have to also understand that a lot of these people are coming from a traumatized place as well. And so we're not well, like our society is not well, majority of us. So when we're engaging with someone, they're reactive based on their own traumas. And if we don't see past, whatever the situation is, you're going to stay in that place, that stuck place of constantly arguing, being in that cycle, butting heads. We have to see deeper. We have to know, like, just for me, like, there's a spirit, like we have to discern beyond the physical person. There's something that happened, and something beyond that current moment. And I think that's important for us, like as hard as that is, like, because I tend to focus on, well, I'm hurt and this is what I went through. What did you go through? Like, what were you experiencing? And I think when I started to do that, especially with her, but even just in relationships with other people, like, you're working from a traumatized place. So yeah, we're coming at it a little combatively. We're not thinking rationally. We're not thinking outside of our emotions. So I think we have to consider that generation before us held things, and we have to understand that we're in an unwell society, and that a lot of us are broken or bruised at least, and not necessarily coming from a well place when we're having these conversations.
Oh, definitely. Like, I know that my mom isn't going to want to heal her stuff. I know that. I'm not going to expect her to heal her stuff, but she was able to have that one moment.
Right.
And that's all that she needed.
Yeah.
It's all what we needed to make the relationship between her and I better. And you know what? I'm grateful and thankful for that. If that's all it is in her lifetime, she will never, just will never. And so, and I understand that. And some people, they are so stuck and rooted into that old operating, the way of being, the way how they see reality through their lens, through their eyes, that, you know, it's just, that's how it is. And how it's important for us to know our sovereignty. So when we are around them, we don't lose our sovereignty to them.
Right.
They can come and meet us in our light and come up to us, because we are holding ourselves accountable and responsible. So we can help them come up. If they choose to or not, that's free will.
Absolutely.
You know, but I don't see my mom in this, like, a little poor little girl that she's damaged or anything. No, I see her as a very powerful woman, that she can do this if she chooses to. But I know she's not, but that's okay. That's her choice. You know.
No,
But
but
yes,
Josh,
so
Josh brought up a good point about the past generation, especially in the Black community. Everything is hush hush, right? And there was a lot of incest and molestation and all kinds of stuff that with you know, mental health and addictions and the drug and the alcohol, like everything. And it's always hush hush, right? And I'm sure that happens in other cultures too, but I can only speak from my own. But you mentioned something earlier, Janese, about, you know, trying to heal in the same negative emotional energy, right? And that's just like, it reminds me of the saying of, you know, insanity, doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result, right? If you want things to change, you have to change. You have to become someone different in order to address those wounds, as you called it, Janese. And that's what I had to do. I had to become someone different. I'm a whole different person now than I was when people knew me from before, because I was in the pain. I was in, you know, the hurt, guilt, and shame, because I was one of those ones too. Like, how could I have let this happen, right? And the first time I kind of justified it because I said I was young. I was really young, and when I got married and all this stuff, but then it happened also in 2018. I wasn't young anymore. And it happened again, right? So, and then over the course of the relationship, I kept attracting the quote unquote same guy, right? That negative, disempowering, narcissistic type of spirit. And I was like, that's something in me. That's like you said, Janese, that was something that was attracting that same spirit. And I said, I'm no longer in agreement with that. So I don't attract that anymore, because I was like, I'm not in agreement with that. That's not what I want, who I want. And I don't need that kind of negative spirit in my life, and certainly no more narcissists. That, I can't do it. That doesn't work for me. So in the interest of time, if people, have to leave, because we are over time a little bit, but this is such a juicy conversation. I just want to ask Janese, are you okay with time? Because you're our guest.
Yeah, I'm good on time.
And if anybody wants to stay and ask any other questions, maybe we'll give it another 10 minutes, because this is a great conversation. So did anybody else have questions before we close out? Amaryllis, are you there?
Hey, Alaysha, I'm here, but I can't come on the camera right now.
Okay, because you had a question from last week, and we do have our speaker from last week here, and maybe both her and Janese. So Charlene was our speaker. She talked about awareness, Janese. And so it's a nice compliment to what you talked about today, because you mentioned awareness. And Amaryllis had a question. She had some tech issues last week, but if you want to ask that question, Amaryllis, I would really appreciate you could bring it up now.
I'm trying to dig in my brain here and remember what that question was. I think it had, how would
you protect your like say daughter? Because Amaryllis has a daughter. So how would you protect your daughter from like, and then it's perfect what you were talking about, Janese, the mother wound. So I know Amaryllis is not doing that to her child, but how do you protect the child from getting into an abusive relationship?
Mm-hmm.
Well, first of all, if it's in your daughter's soul contract that that's her lesson that she needs to experience, you can go in and break that contract if that's not in her contract. That's just on the bigger spiritual level. As far as on the physical level, what you can do right now is just show her your power, show her your strength, show her that she has a voice, show her that she is loved and that her voice and means matter. A lot of times what I found in myself and what things, situations, trauma happened is because I didn't feel that I had a voice. I didn't feel that I wasn't good enough. So as much as you can empower her, that will help her change, that situation or not passing that on to her.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also tools and techniques I can help you share with her depending on the severity of your situation. I'm not sure, but
Well, she's just 9 years old, but I do,
Yeah,
I came from a household where my dad was an alcoholic. So, I saw the fights and everything with, like you said, happening with my mom. And I found myself not necessarily the alcohol stuff, my husband does not drink at all, but finding myself like reacting in a way that she would have reacted to something that perhaps I did when I was a kid. And I wanted to break that cycle, like the physical abuse, like just hitting with a belt or like just, that sort of thing, or, verbally abusive.
right. Oh, yeah, I can totally relate on that. My mom would do that, but she didn't have any alcohol. She would just do that because I think she did it for fun. I don't know. But for me, it was like when that was happening to me growing up, I lost all sense of my identity. And so when I was raising my own child, I noticed my own triggers and I noticed like I felt my mom's energy coming through me. Like I heard, as I was yelling at my son at 7, I heard my mom's voice come out of my mouth. That's what stopped me. And then that kind of like took me back. One thing you can also do for yourself is to like give yourself love and compassion when that happens and you're just a human being learning. And you can actually talk with your daughter like I did with my son because she's at that age, and make a little pact with her.
Yeah.
So that when these things do come up, because once they come up and you recognize their patterns, trust me, you're going to break them because you're not unconscious to them anymore. Once you become aware of something, you will break them. It just takes time and patience on your part and self-love on your part for doing that. And the more that you can like love yourself, like I literally had to, even till this day, like I had to like, he's 25, like just recently I found myself like, little jolted a bit, but then I realized like, oh no, I'm not that person anymore. I need to handle it. Like it will come up, but it's just, you're not going to allow it to affect you. You're not going to bring it into your aura, into your energy field, And then that's where the power is in you, where you will start to build that own sovereign power inside of you.
I love that. Yeah, that's good. And I have broken a lot of those things, but yeah, sometimes I find myself, going back into that. I'm like, nope, we're not doing that. We're not going there. Yep.
Exactly. Yes. They're gonna come up. They're gonna come up.
the key with the awareness that you talked about, that consciousness. And again, we kicked it off last week with that idea with Charlene of awareness and consciousness of these patterns, right? And then once you know them, you can't unknow them, right? So, and because you're learning and growing in spaces like this, now you know what to do in order to protect yourself. And or to heal yourself, or to break those patterns. And that happened with me too, with my son. And the one thing I said is like, you will not disrespect women, or be violent to women, or be, narcissistic, anything. And people in here know my son. He is a good young man, and I thank God for that every day, because he will make worry more about somebody taking advantage of him than him the other way around. Right? Because he's had such a good heart. And that was the one thing I said, if I did nothing else in this world, that was the one thing that I wanted to be able to say. I succeeded at, I was proud of, and I accomplished to have this young man be, all that God has for him, and design him to be. And that's happened. He'll be 27 this November. And I can't be more proud of him. And that was the only thing I looked for at the time. But then now he's grown, right? So I had to start looking at myself and, okay, what do I do now? And then God gave me this big vision to help other women to empower and inspire and to bring them along this journey of freedom like that I had experienced, because it took some time. And people in this room who know me know. I mean, they know. And it's like so amazing that everyone that's going to be on this podcast series is all in like-minded. Every episode is going to complement one another and really build. And that wasn't something that I set up. It just, in God's divine order and time. So because of the sake of the time, I don't want to keep going, because I know we could talk forever. But I just, Janese, thank you so much for opening your heart, giving your time, and pouring into us the way you did today. I felt every bit of energy that you was releasing, so that you could share your truth and open up to us some opportunity, and for us to, again, have this awareness that Charlene talked about. And then how do we stop that in its tracks? We can manifest and create whatever we want. It's just the power of positive thinking, right? So if we and stop allowing people to let us absorb the negative energy, like I've really learned to not do that anymore. and I've had better days.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
learning new tools for a new way
Exactly.
of being. And communication is key. The more you can communicate, be honest with yourself, and being able to look at all the ugly, dark stuff that you don't want to look at, but have compassion looking at them, you can change that, and communicate. Thank you.
Yeah, communication is key. So again, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back here next week, every Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we are looking forward, and Dr. Joshua Williams is actually one of our future speakers, and Minister Shonda Wells as well. So we have some folks in the room who will be sharing from a powerful space. Yes, thank you so much for being here. So the replay, we're going to have, Charlie and I know I have to do this first, but we're going to have the replays on maybe a YouTube channel, and then also I have Anchor. So you'll be able to find the replays, and it will be in the tribe in Facebook, Warrior Women's Thriving Tribe in Facebook. So if you're not in there, please feel free to join us. I think everyone here is in there. But this is so powerful, Janese. And so Janese bonus that she wants to offer folks. So now be probably just trying to share that.
I can put it in the comments as well. But I offer a 45-minute self-awareness call. And we're going to go and dive deep on some of these patterns that are coming up for you. so that you can come up with like a clear plan, similar to what I was kind of talking to Amaryllis today, you know, something like that. But then really coming up with a clear plan of actual like tools I can share with you, tools like I shared with you guys today that you guys can start to incorporate that in your life and making those shifts, because that's how we transform. Is we need new tools on the way of being, not from the tools of that worked maybe in the past and maybe worked for our parents, but it kept them in lack and scarcity and, you know, and all of that and fear. Now we need to learn a different set of tools in that. So that's what the 45-minute self-discovery call will be about. And then, yeah, kind of help you with that along the journey.
Awesome. So, and again, I mentioned earlier that Janese will be working with us. I'll be launching my program in October in honor of Domestic Violence Awareness Month. So keep on the watch for that. You'll get invitations, and those who've already done my coaching, breakthrough coaching, you guys will be the first to get the invitations. And when we launch the 6-week program, we're just going to start with that. Janese has offered to be able to work with us even further. So having the free discovery call with her will prepare you for going into the program, going through the framework, the power up framework that I have. And then Janese is going to offer some more training around, you know, what we talked about, the emotional mastery. So and the forgiveness piece as well, because those are the two pieces that we need to start with in our program. So as you can see, her and I total alignment of everything, you know, that we've been sharing in our tribe. I've put the tribe link to Facebook in the chat, and she has also put the link to the Calendly, to the self-awareness call. So go ahead and either copy that or open the links, and we're going to give you guys time to do that. And then those of you on the replay will have an opportunity for you to do that when you do the replay as well. We'll put this in the replay. All right. And friend her on Facebook as well. If you're on Facebook, and friend me as well. And I'm across all social medias as Warriors Tribe. So you'll find me in Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, whatever else. I'm on across all of them. But I'm on the tribe the most in Instagram mode. So all right. So I think we're going to go ahead and close this session out. Again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being here. Episode 3 will be next, and have a wonderful evening. Bye-bye.
Bye, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes,
Janese,
thank you
thanks so
again.
much.
Welcome.
I'm going to stop the recording.